Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Lisa with Lisa's Faith and Budget Planning channel. I'm excited to be here today. I have been reading Healthy Me, Healthy Us for the past few weeks. I'm currently just finished chapter 4 and really good chapter. I'm going to share a lot of that about that today. But before I do, I kind of want to recap chapter 1 through 3 with their titles and just let you know that these chapters, one builds upon the other. And when you're working in this book and when you're doing the challenges and you're taking your time through this book, as you're going through these chapters, it's worth going through them slowly and being purposeful in what you are wanting to accomplish with each chapter. So the chapter 1 is turning into your self-talk. And I love that chapter. I recognize more of my self-talk now. A lot of my negative self-talk is diminishing and I'm catching a lot of that. So that is really good. Moving past your past, still working on that one. I think that one's probably the harder chapter to get through just because some of us have difficulties in our past and we just can't, you have a hard time getting past them. And it really takes a lot of patience and prayer for something like that. It wouldn't take long to do the process, but in your heart and your mind, that's where you still got to work it out. So, but I loved it. It was very good. I was very lovingly and kind in getting you through that process. So moving past your past. And then part 2 is unswerving authenticity. I love that. It just reminds me of who I am and who I'd like to be. And many years ago, that was one of my biggest goals, is being truly authentic, open, and available, exactly who I am. I did not want to be what other people thought I should be. I wanted to be who I actually was and being authentic in that. Uncovering your blind spots. That was interesting. I remember this past week or so, Eric and my husband and I were uncovering blind spots that we didn't see about ourselves, and through conversations with other people, and really reflected back like the book suggested and going from there. So I thought that was really cool. I'm seeing and putting in action the activities and the conversations and in the book, that what it's asking you to do, and putting it into my day-to-day life. And just love that. I love that I've informed myself this, and then now I can recognize it at the same time. So this book is definitely worth it. It's definitely something I would recommend, and I would love for anybody who does decide to do this book, just take your time with it and really take it all in. So today, let me get to the chapter. Oh no, where to go? Okay, facing your fears with honesty. So this is about facing your fears of more about stepping out of your comfort zone, facing your fears about your calling from God, your purpose, your passion, those kinds of things. Facing those fears. What is holding you back from following your passions? What is holding you back from following what God is calling you to do? Something I've learned recently, that when God calls me to something, it's not something He wants me to be fully equipped right away. He's just giving me a heads up, and then He starts equipping me, and then I take off from there. That's something I've learned in the past year or so, and I absolutely love that. But this is talking about those passions that you have. What is holding you back? What is that fear? And what is the honest truth behind that fear? Are you conditioned, in a sense, from past experiences, negative experiences? Are you afraid of the negative responses? Are you afraid of, how people are going to treat you because you're doing something and you can't or don't want to face the judgment or the negativity or whatever the situation may be? So as you go on, it starts talking about stepping outside your comfort zone, and it walks you through that process, which I really liked. What I learned in that section is a lot of times we'll trade our passion, our calling, our desires, our drive for security. And when I read that, I went, wow, just red flashes were going off. I can see that in spots in my life where I allowed it to hold me back, and I really didn't need to. But God is a God of many millions of chances and start overs and new beginnings. So he just keeps coming back to us, and he keeps picking us up from right where we're at. And so if you've missed out on chances, if you missed out on opportunities, you recognize you were trading your passion for security and not walking it out with God, here's your chance to try again. Here's your chance to step up and step outside that comfort zone and face your fears with honesty and move forward from there. Is it worth the risk? I believe so. I wouldn't be on this channel if I didn't think it was worth the risk. I wouldn't be at my church if I didn't think it was worth the risk. I had a lot of fears and anxiety going back to church after being home and not going to church for 15 years, not raising my kids in the church, and all that, using this excuse of their autism, or using the excuse of we're a military family, we move too often, we don't want to commit to one place, or, that kind of thing. Allowing those fears to hinder my ability to grow in the Lord. And I don't regret in my past, but I thank the Lord that he said, oh, here's another chance. Let's go out of your comfort zone. Let's step out in faith. Let's move forward in this. And here's your passion. When I went back to church, the first passion I had was Bible studies, and I could not get enough Bible studies. I would do 2 of them at a time if I had to. God kind of went, you need to slow down, girl. But, after a while, I did slow down. But I just could not get enough information. I couldn't get enough of what I was feeling, and that was awesome. And I still love it. I just do it in different forms now. I do it in different ways. And the next thing in here, after stepping out of your comfort zone, is why facing your fears matters. And it matters because you are hindering yourself from a calling from the Lord, or you are hindering yourself from something you're really passionate and really good and that the Lord could use. You're hindering yourself from accomplishing dreams and goals that you may never have thought of before. And one area where I thought, oh, if I love Bible study so much, maybe I'll become a Bible study teacher. But I was fearful in the sense that I didn't want to stand up in front and teach a class and things like that. I'm better on camera than I am with a group of people. I actually lose my voice. I get so nervous in front of a group of people, especially when I'm doing something with my passion. So I was like, God, I don't know how to get to that point. So maybe this is a stepping stone before I get to that point, or maybe it's a totally different design that God had in mind that he knew I could do, and he is putting me in that position. So facing your fears, and I did have fear coming on YouTube. I did have fear stepping out of my comfort zone. I just had so much passion, it overrode any fear that I had. And when I started committing to it, which is, a spoiler alert, that's the success of overcoming your fears, is when you commit to it. It matters because it unveils your passions, it unveils what God's calling you to, and you just move forward from there. Facing those fears are definitely worth the risk. It's definitely worth moving forward in. And so I hope it's something that encourages you, that if you're faced with something and you're trying to overcome an obstacle, that facing that fear and moving forward is something you're willing to try to do, and walk that out with God, or run it out, because in scripture it says don't walk, run. And I love that scripture. It's in Ephesians. I'll get to that later. It's in the book here. But yeah, Paul's talking to the Ephesians, and that was really good. So the next section talks about finding your path to passion. Finding your path to passion is an inside job. It's in here. If you don't know what your passion is, you don't know what your calling is, and you're just kind of going through every day, like the world is moving you and you aren't moving in with the world, or moving through the world, and everything else dictates your life and you're not. That might be a good time. This might be a good way and a good time to start going, what is my passions? How do I find my passions? What is my path? What is my calling from the Lord. What does he want me to do? I mean, I feel just so bogged down. And what I've discovered personally is it starts in here. And it starts with me going, God, I'm going to be open and listening to you. Let's talk about this. And I'm going to be patient to listen. I'm not just going to go, okay, these are the ministries in my church. This is what I think I should be doing, so I'm just going to do it. That's not how I personally operate. When it comes to church, when it comes to service, I really focus on, God, you tell me where my place is and what I do. And what I do in my church, we do home group once a week. And we talk about the Sunday sermons, and we meet together in fellowship and food and fun. And we have a night of worship in my home. It's kind of like, instead of Wednesday night service where the traditional churches have, we have home groups, and we meet in each other's homes. And actually more people like doing that and getting together and talking about and having discussion about the sermon on a real one-on-one level with a group of people. You get more out of the sermon, you get more out of your own personal experiences in life, and it's amazing. So that is a ministry that I fell in love with. But if I had jumped in and just said, okay, there's ministry opportunities, what can I do? It would have been the typical work with the kids, be a greeter, help clean up or something like that. That's what I was normally gravitating to. But this home group thing was even more amazing. Not that I wouldn't do those. I would definitely do those. And I have done them. But my passion led me into this home group once I opened myself up for understanding what God had for me and where my passions was leading me. So when I was reading Finding Your Path to Passion, it started in here, and that hit me. I was like, yeah, it does start in here. It does inside to that conversation you have with yourself and the Lord, that kind of thing. The next step in the book is the risk taker's advantage. So it discusses a little bit about that, that you need to take a risk and what the risk taker's advantage is. I won't go too much detail. It's basically, don't just live as if you're waiting for that lucky break, or you're waiting for God to give you a sign, or waiting for God to tell you. Sometimes God talks to us in many different ways. Sometimes it's through scripture. Sometimes it's a person passing by mentioning something to you, which happened to me. The same church was told to me 3 times by 3 people before I realized that was the church that God chosen for me, because that was my prayer. God, please, I need you to choose the church. I couldn't church shop at the time. And so this is for people who aren't used to taking risk, but taking the risk will make the biggest difference in where basically what the risk taker advantage is talking about here is talking about how when you are willing to take the risk for the reward, or for pleasing God, or doing your passion, or what God has called you to do, that risk is worth the risk, because you have more happiness, you have more joy, and you are more connected to your passions and your calling in life. You have the same problems as everybody else does. It's just you're willing to take the risk. So if you're somebody that does not take risk, or rarely takes risk, and you don't measurably, based on studies and stuff, there are individuals that aren't as happy or joyful, or have less experiences of happiness and joy. So it's important to take healthy risks, not extreme risks. They're not talking about jumping out of planes and walking on coal, or showing off some adrenaline risk. We're just talking about taking the risk for your passions, for your callings by the Lord, and things like that. So, and then the next part is the secret to overcoming your fears. So they have a long list of what is called, what do they call it? The paradoxical commandments. And I thought they were very interesting. I'm not going to read all of them, but essentially what it's saying is, whatever it is you're putting in front of it, do it anyway. Love anyway. Succeed anyway. What else? Think big anyway. If people are being negative on what you're trying to accomplish, what your passions are, if they're pushing back and you feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, maybe they're right, maybe do it anyway. If you know it's right, if you know it's good, you know it's pure of heart, and it is a calling or it is a passion of yours, do it anyway. That is the secret of success, because everybody is going to have that negative person or that negative response from somebody who is not going to understand completely. And maybe they're not very successful, or they seem successful, but they don't want others to be successful, or they don't even know they're doing it because it's one of their blind spots. You don't know. But what I do know is to be successful is to do it anyway, to try anyway. I feel I'm successful in my YouTube channel. I'm successful in my Etsy store. I'm successful in, I'm not even great success. They may be small successes, but I am happy and enjoying. I have found my passion. I'm listening to the Lord, His calling for me, and basically putting Him out there to the world. And that is the ultimate thing. I have talked to people all over the world, Pakistan, Malaysia, here all over the United States, just everywhere, talking about Canada. I've talked to people in Canada. Trying to think if there's anybody else I know for sure. But for me, this overcoming my fear and being successful means that I don't stop, that I don't give up, that I don't stop praying about it, I don't stop talking to God about it, that I don't stop moving forward in it and putting those fears aside and giving them to God. So that's my take on being successful in when you're fearful. And the first step, I know it's a cliche, but it's always the hardest. The first step is the hardest, but it's worth the first step. It's worth the difficulty. It's worth putting yourself out there to move forward and just watch God's glory happen. I mean, the conversations I've had, the love I've seen and given and have been given and have given to others, and I just never would have experienced it if I hadn't stepped out of my comfort zone, found my passion, found my calling with God in this season. Callings with God's change all the time. God has a specific time period and thing He wants you to do. Not all calling from God is for like a big thing, like being a missionary or being a pastor or being a youth leader or something like that. They are callings for, and they can be those kind of callings, but many times for most of us, I think the callings are a little shorter and a little more creative than those specific big ministry callings. And sometimes it's just you're the one in the neighborhood that checks in on the neighbors and loves on them and pours into them. And that is your ministry. So, you know, it could be small, it could be big, it could be everything in between, but listening to Him and allowing Him to lead you in that calling. That's making that first step and trusting that first step and pushing forward through that it's always the hardest, but once you're into it, you'll never regret it. I've never regretted it, and I just have to keep focusing on the Lord and what He's telling me and where He's guiding me. Let's see. Then part 3 of chapter 4 is, and I'm not sure why they have these parts in between the chapters, but I went ahead and read it anyway. It's a completely different section, so I'm going to include it. It's called Self-Giving Love, which I thought was very interesting. Self-giving love is one of those loves. It's not sacrificial love. There's a difference between, for me anyway, when I see somebody being over sacrificial and they're loving on someone, I actually get annoyed by that, especially when it's not necessary. But when it's a love of how they put it, self-giving. And I have a great example from me. On once a week I meet with somebody and we talk about budgeting, we talk about finance and stuff like that, and I help them through that process. But in the midst of all that is this self-giving love of her loving into me and pouring into me. And I remember her saying one day, you know, we don't have to meet for 3 or 4 hours once a week like we have been doing. If, you know, because she feeds me lunch because she's so thankful, or she'll, and we'll talk and we'll chat about a million different things, but she's just loving and pouring into me. And I said, no, I get as much out of this, meeting with you, in this self-giving love that she's been giving me, as much as she is getting out of it from me, helping her and teaching her about her, how to pay her bills and taking care of all the necessities like that. So, yeah, I absolutely love that kind of give into and pouring into somebody. One thing we can't live without and be happy is love. It's the one thing everyone can agree on that we all desire and covet the most. And it's very important because love, especially godly love, it never fails. God will never fail us, and God's love never fails. And that is what I took away from this section of part 3 of chapter 4 here. It's beautiful. So, and thinking of my friend, just realizing she is giving, self-giving love. I mean, just in such a godly way that, yeah, I have a lot of joy just thinking about it right now. So I hope you liked this video. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of these videos, once a week right now, I'm doing these chapters on Healthy Me, Healthy Us, and then I do my budgets. And I'll be coming out with a lot of budget stuff, and I have new budget sheets in my Etsy store. So if you want to check that out. Until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.